Hey guys, it's Alex, and today I'm here with a rather excessive and unnecessary and absurdly large book haul. I have acquired a number of books lately, 27 in the past month, I think. Unintentionally, but also I have no one to blame but myself for this. There are three parts to this book haul. The first is books I acquired at work. I got six ARCs from work. We have a shelf of ARCs, which are advanced reader copies, just at my work because I work at a bookstore and they're just up for the taking. There's no oversight and I have a problem saying no. I bought 3 books from my library book sale because they had a couple books that looked really interesting to me. And then I went to visit my best friend in South Carolina and we went thrifting together and I bought 18 books. So that is the bulk of this haul, but I'm going to start with the books that I got from work. Most of these ARCs have already come out. They're not to come out. Which is kind of why I got them. When I get a book that hasn't come out yet for review, I do like specifically to review it, to read it, like right around the time it comes out. That does get to be kind of a lot if you get a lot of books like that. But there are 6 here. I think only 2 of them still have yet to come out. So I'll go through these kind of quickly because I don't know super much about all of them. The first is When Time Stopped by Ariana Neumann. This is a nonfiction book. It's a memoir of this girl who grew up in Venezuela who found out, I think as an adult, that her father was Jewish and that 25 of his 34 family members were killed by Nazis in Czechoslovakia during World War II. And it's kind of just about her father and his life and what he went through because he didn't talk about any of that when she was a child. This came out in January. I was kind of looking at this for a while and I kept being like, no, I shouldn't. I don't need that book. And then it disappeared for a while and I got sad because someone else took it to read it, I guess. And then they returned it and I was like, I need this. So this does look really good. We have copies on it on our shelf that I've kind of looked at and it looks like a fascinating book. And I really like World War II and it's interesting to be from the perspective of the child. It's the daughter who's realizing this, who didn't grow up with this knowledge, who didn't even know that her father was Jewish, but sounds fascinating. The next is The Prized Girl by Amy K. Green. This is an adult thriller about a beauty pageant queen who is murdered, and then her older half-sister, who's kind of an outcast versus she was the pretty popular one. And it's kind of about their lives and the secrets that they had, and I don't know. Sounds fascinating. It doesn't take much for a thriller to really grab my attention, but this one looked good, and I think this also came out in January. And this isn't even an ARC copy. It is an ARC. It was sent to our store as an ARC for review, but it's not an ARC edition. It's just a regular hardback. So I was like, that's cool. But I am really looking forward to getting into this one and seeing what it's like, because it's hard to go into thrillers just because it's I've never heard of this author. I think this is her debut, and it's just I know nothing about this book. This could be awful. This could be amazing. Not a clue. I just know the vague description that I read from the first 3 sentences on the back. The Lost Orphan by Stacey Halls. This is a historical fiction novel set during, I believe, the 1700s. It's about a young woman who gives up her daughter to a foundling hospital, and then 6 years later she comes back planning to collect the daughter because she now has a life where she can support a child, and the daughter has already been claimed, and it's kind of what's going on? Oh no. And we have a whole table of historical fiction books at my work, right beside the registers, that I look at all the time, and I am such trash for historical fiction and that it all sounds interesting to me, and I really don't read it as much as I would like to. And that table, just looking at that table, this isn't one of the books on it. This comes out April 7th or something. It makes me want to read historical fiction. So when I saw this, I grabbed it because it looked exciting, and it's not 100% the kind of historical fiction I usually gravitate towards, but it sounds really good. The other ARC that hasn't come out yet is Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jedrowski. He's a Polish author, but he wrote this book in English. It's not translated. This is about 2 boys in Poland in the 1980s who are gay and kind of their relationship and what's going on in the politics of the time, and it sounded fascinating. This also comes out in April of this year. This one I know the least about because I was just yes, I'm in a bad mood. Work is stressful. This book sounds good. So I don't really know much about it, but I am really looking forward to getting into it soon. Then I've got Most Likely by Sarah Watson. This came out earlier in March. This is a young adult contemporary novel about 4 girls who one of them is going to be the first female president of the United States. This I'm not really excited for, and I know it's weird to have a book haul and be like, this book doesn't sound very good to me, but like, it doesn't. I picked this up because this is the book that was picked for our YA book club at work for April. When we meet in April, we're going to be talking about this book, and I'm the host of that book club, so I have to read it. It doesn't sound great to me. Like, it doesn't sound like a bad book. It just really doesn't sound like my kind of thing. I tend to like a lot darker contemporaries when I read them and like more issue driven, and this seems like it's supposed to be like kind of funny and like I'm sure political and interesting and there's serious stuff going on, but also like I think it's supposed to be pretty funny, and that doesn't usually draw me in. But Lauren Graham did blurb this book, which is cool. I love Lauren Graham. And Sarah Watson, the author, actually was an executive producer and writer on the show Parenthood, which I really loved. So maybe it'll surprise me. I'm going to try to go into this with an open mind, but I will say I'm not super excited about this one. And the final arc I got was The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. I keep hearing amazing things about Lisa Jewell. She's just one of those thriller authors that everyone seems to love. And I kept hearing that about Karen Slaughter too. Everyone was like, Karen Slaughter's great. She's like so interesting and dark and creepy and wonderful. And I was like, sounds fake, but okay. And then I read Karen Slaughter and loved her. So hopefully I have a similar reaction with Lisa Jewell. This book came out last September and it's literally been on that ARC shelf since I was hired in November. So I'm not like super concerned about getting to this one soon. I don't think my review is really going to do anything for the sales of Lisa Jewell. She seems like she's doing fine and this book has been out for a while. So this is probably just going to go on my shelf and not be like a priority read the way that most of the ARCs I get are. But I don't know. I'm kind of down to try Lisa Jewell. I've been meaning to for a while, and it just seemed like, hey, free book. And I don't know. I don't have great self-control when it comes to free books. Then the 3 books I picked out from the library book sale, I got The Interestings by Meg Wolitzer. I keep hearing wonderful things about Meg Wolitzer. It seems like she's a literary fiction author, I think, maybe. I don't know. She's taken kind of seriously, is what I mean by that, which I don't know. That is what it is. Whether or not it means she's good or not, I have no idea. But this is about a group of 6 teenagers who go to like a gifted arts summer program, and like they're all like very gifted kids. They're all like very artistic. They're all like, oh, I wouldn't call them geniuses, but they're like gifted in whatever talent or skill or artistic music thing they have. I don't know. But this kind of follows them through their adulthood and like how things change and how like a piano prodigy at 16 turns into just like a 45-year-old accountant who hasn't played a piano in like years. So that's a random example. That's not what this book is about, but that's like the essence of this book, I believe. It's like how these teenagers who are like really into arts and gifted in those arts kind of just turn into regular adults, if that makes sense. I don't know. It sounded fascinating, and I do like books that have a wide scope like that. I think it can be really fantastic when it's well done, and from what I've heard of Meg Wolitzer, I think it might be really well done in this one. Girl Interrupted by Susanna Kaysen. This is a memoir about a girl in the 80s or 90s, I forget which, who was committed into a mental asylum, and I think she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and there were maybe suicide attempts. It's based. There's a really famous movie based on this book, and I saw the movie like years ago, and since then I've always been kind of curious what the real story was, like what really happened to this girl and what it was really like for her, because this memoir is really just about like her experience in that mental health asylum, and I found that really fascinating, and this has been on my list for a really long time to get to, so I was pretty excited to find a copy of it. And Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This I hear about, and every time I hear about it, I think, I would love that book. I had no idea what this book is about. I could not describe a single thing about this, although I think there is an adoption in it. But I literally couldn't tell you a single thing about this book. It's just like, whenever people talk about it or describe it, because it's pretty popular on BookTube, I see a lot of people reading it, and not all of them giving it a good rating. But it's one of those books that I always feel very drawn towards. Like, I would really love this book. Would I? I'm not really 100% sure on that. Like, I don't know. But it sounds like I would. So I've wanted to read this for a long time, and I really couldn't resist when I saw it on the shelf. And then we get into the 18 books I bought while down in South Carolina. My friend and I just kind of went thrifting all day. Like, we went to a variety of thrift stores, and some of them like Goodwill, some of them were like independent ones that benefited a children's hospital or children with cancer or whatever. I'm not really sure. But I found a lot of good books because I feel like the thrift stores in my area, I wouldn't say they're picked over because they do change their inventory quite a bit because like people donate things and people buy them. But because I go to them so frequently, I can go to like the Goodwill that's closest to me that I go to the most and probably recognize like half to 2/3 of the books on those bookshelves just because I've been so many times and they don't change over that much. But it was fun to go to a new one. So I'm gonna try to not take forever going through these because I don't have loads to say about all of them. But the first, I got 3 books in a series. I got the first 3 of the Mediator books, which is, what's the first one? This is Shadowland, Ninth Key, and Reunion of the Mediator books by Meg Cabot. These are YA contemporary supernatural stuff about a girl who is a mediator. She can see ghosts and like other people can't see ghosts, and because of that she gets into kind of a lot of trouble, and she's like really sarcastic and snarky, and she moves to California with like her stepbrothers and her stepfather who she's not really a fan of, and there's some hot Civil War ghost who lives in her bedroom, and they kind of have a romance while she does things. And it's like, it sounds super cheesy and cliche, and I'm not going to say it's not, because it totally is. But Meg Cabot's books always kind of sound like that, but they're usually super well done. And I loved these books when I was in high school. Like, I read them so many times, and they're really not the kind of books that I usually gravitate towards. Like, even when they're well done, it's like, I don't really like ghost stories at all. But, I don't know. Like, these are definitely, like, not, like, serious, dark books, but they also have, like, drama to them. And I don't know, I love them so much, and because the thrift store had all 3, I really couldn't resist picking them up. And this might be a series that I try to collect because I definitely read and reread these all the time in high school. Then I got the Hardy Boys number 6, Casefiles, The Crowning Terror, that's what it's called, yes. I'm trying to collect all the Hardy Boys Casefiles books because I really wanted to read them when I was younger, but they were the kind of books where it didn't make much sense to read them out of order because I feel like there were big things that happened in these books, like bigger than in the regular books. Like, main characters were killed, I think, and there was like weird cloning stuff going on, and it was very strange, and I always desperately wanted to read them, and my library didn't have them, so I've just been trying to collect them, and I have no idea what this particular one is about. Then I got Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She's very popular, both on BookTube and outside of BookTube. Just in general, she's quite well known. I read one of her short stories in college, I think. I'm like 90% sure. And I've wanted to read her for a very long time. The one I wanted to read was Purple Hibiscus. I think that's what it's called. That's the one I've been like drawn to more. This one, Americanah, I've wanted to read as well, but I don't really know what it's about. It was just one of those like, oh, I want to read that, so I grabbed it and didn't read the back. So I have nothing to say on this book except that I am quite looking forward to it. The Girl on the Velvet Swing, Sex, Murder, and Madness at the Dawn of the 20th Century by Simone Baatz. I heard someone talk about this book. I swear I heard someone talk about this book. And I remember being like, I want to read that book. That book sounds really good. I have no idea who talked about this book. Like, not a single clue. I don't remember anything about it. I didn't even look on Goodreads to see if I added it to my TBR. But when I saw this on the shelf, I was like, that sounds vaguely familiar. I think I really wanted to read that at one point. And I just picked it up. And it's a true crime book, I believe. It's true crime about a girl who gets murdered. I don't know. I'm not going to read that. But I think it's true crime. I don't think it's fiction. It might be fiction. I don't know. But I really want to read it. It sounded really good. And I just remember having that burning desire to read it. Like, oh yes, I want this book. I want it. And when I saw it on the shelf at Goodwill, or not at Goodwill. This was at the Children's Hospital one. It doesn't matter. I remembered having that burning desire to read it, so I picked it up. Still Alice by Lisa Genova. This is an adult contemporary about a woman who I believe is a professor who gets Alzheimer's, and it's from her perspective as she's kind of spiraling down into Alzheimer's and as she progresses and gets worse. I have seen this in thrift stores for a while. It's one that like always tends to crop up, and I've thought about getting it for a while. But recently, Ariana over from Booksellers read it, and she did a review on it, which I will link down below. And it sounded really interesting, and she really, really enjoyed it. So I was like, sure, time for me to read it. And then I saw it. I just saw it in the thrift store, and I was like, okay, sure. Clearly, it's a sign that I must own this book and read it soon. The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I don't know how much I need to talk about this one. It's Sylvia Plath's novel that's like semi-autobiographical about like mental health and suicide and depression and all of that. I've wanted to read it for a long time, but I've always been like kind of holding out to buy my own copy because I knew eventually I would find it in a thrift store somewhere, and I finally did, so yay. This one didn't really require any thought. I was just like, oh, the Bell Jar, I want that. And yeah, I probably won't read this one super soon, but like it is one that I have wanted to read eventually and to have for my shelf. Then this massive tome, Fall of Giants by Ken Follett. This is the first in one of his series. I own the Pillars of the Earth. I own the Pillars of the Earth, and that's the first in another series, and then this is the first in a different series, and I should probably work on collecting one full series instead of like getting two different ones, especially when I don't know if I like Ken Follett. It's historical fiction. Beyond that, I have no idea. They clearly have a very wide scope because they're very wide books. But I was kind of on the fence about whether to get this one or not, and I was just walking through the thrift store holding it, thinking about it, and then one of the dudes who worked there was just like, yo, that's a really good book. And I was like, sold. I'm buying it. So I bought it. I don't think this is going to be like the top of my list anytime soon, but eventually, assuming that I like Pillars of the Earth, which I will probably read first, I will probably get to this one. Maybe. Then I got two Karen Slaughter books, Fallen and Unseen. That's the wrong way around. It doesn't matter. Fallen and Unseen. These are in the Will Trent series. I've already read them, but I saw them in mass market paperback form, so they would match the first two books in the series that I have, and I really loved the Will Trent series. I read all 9 books in like a span of 2.5 months or something ridiculous, and I saw these two, and I was like, I can't resist. Unseen was probably one of my favorites in that series, like one of the top 2 or 3 books that I read. I loved it. Fallen was probably my least favorite, but this is a series where I would be down to collect it and own all 9 books. Like, I don't want to own everything Karen Slaughter has written, because I definitely saw some of her other books there, and I was like, pass. But I would like to own this series, because I really love cop thrillers, and this is probably the best cop thriller series I've ever read, and my favorite. So, yeah, I don't know if I'll reread these. I probably will eventually, at least my favorites, but yeah, I'm gonna be on the lookout for like the other 5 books in this series. Then I got And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This is, I don't know, one of her mysteries. I don't know anything about this. It's like a closed room mystery, and it's one of the most well known, and it's one where people are like, start here, start here. And I was planning to start with Murder on the Orient Express, but then people were like, no, don't start with that one. So I saw this, and maybe I'll start with this one instead. The School for Good and Evil by Soman Chaimnani. This is a middle grade fantasy book about a universe in which there's a school for good and a school for evil, and these 2 girls, the dark one and the blonde one, the dark one winds up going to the school for good, and the blonde one winds up going to the school for evil, and of course they thought they were going to the opposite school, and kind of drama ensues. This is a whole long series, and it's not the kind of thing I ordinarily read, but honestly it sounds really good, and every time people talk about it I'm like, I want to read that, so I bought it, and hopefully I really like it. Hopefully it lives up to the premise for me, because I don't read tons of middle grade, but I don't know, for whatever reason, this one just sounds really good to me. Then I picked up The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. I read In the Lake of the Woods by Tim O'Brien, like last summer. I'll link my review down below. And I gave it 3 stars. I kind of had some issues with it, but there were a lot of things that I wanted to like about that book that I was like, this is well done. I don't understand why I don't like that. So, I saw this, and in the comments of that video, everyone was like, you should read The Things They Carried. Like, definitely pick up that one. That one's amazing. Read that. So I did like that one in The Lake of the Woods enough that I wanted to try more of Tim O'Brien, especially since everyone recommended this so heavily and I hadn't read it before. So they had a couple of copies of it, and I went with this one. So I don't know. I am looking forward to this. I know a lot of people really love this book and really love him, so hopefully I will like this one better than the previous one. Also, I think it's about the Vietnam War, but I'm not 100% sure because I didn't read the back. But In the Lake of the Woods was also about the Vietnam War, so that feels like a semi-safe assumption. Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I don't know if I really need to say anything about this one. It's an apocalyptic dystopian world where people pretty much just play video games, and that sort of becomes real life in a way, and things go down, and there are lots of 80s references. I don't know. I wanted to read this for a long time, and I was kind of just waiting to find a copy in the thrift store, and I found one. Yay! I don't really have a whole lot to say about this, but I am quite looking forward to reading it. It's a little bit of a beat-up copy, but you know, after the first, 50 pages, the water damage stops, so whatever, it's fine. We Were the Lucky Ones by Georgia Hunter. This is a historical fiction novel. I think it's World War II based. I'm not 100% sure, but again, like I said earlier, we have that historical fiction table at work, and I just look at the books there all the time, and this is one of those books, and it used to have a full table just to itself at one point, a month or two ago, and I kind of was intrigued by it, so I saw it, and I bought it, and I have no self-control. By Your Side by Casey West. This is a young adult contemporary romance. This girl gets locked in a library for the weekend with this bad boy who she doesn't really like, and they kind of have a romance, and it sounds super cute. And I keep hearing things about Casey West, and I keep hearing that her earlier books are better, and this was published in 2017, so clearly not one of her earlier books, but I saw it at the thrift store and I couldn't resist, and it's a plot where a girl gets locked in a library for a weekend. That sounds so much fun to me, and I don't know. I'm down for that premise. And even if the book is not great, I think it's gonna be fun enough, and it doesn't have to be great if I know what it is going in, and I'm down for what it is. And I feel like I'd be down to try some Casey West. And then finally, the last book I purchased after this long video is Homegoing by Yassi. This is an adult contemporary historical fiction, I don't know, realistic fiction novel about things. I don't really remember what this book is about. I've heard it talked about a lot of times, and everyone is always like, this is my favorite thing ever. This book is amazing. Read this book. And I've been like, yes, I must read that book. And I never did, even though I'm sure my library has plenty of copies. But I saw it. Actually, before I saw this book, I saw a book called Homecoming. And I thought it said homegoing for a moment, and I got really disappointed because I was like, oh, I wish it was homegoing. I would have bought that, but it's just something called Homecoming that I've never heard of and have no interest in. And then I saw this, and I was so excited because it's just a wild roller coaster ride to go from that disappointed to that excited. And it was wonderful, and I was like, oh, I need it, and now I have it. And now I have to read it at some point in the not too distant future, because now I own way too many books. My unread TBR is substantially over 500 now. It might be up to 520. I kind of went wild this month, and I need to not do that in the future. I really need to buckle down and read the books that I own. Although I will say, one of my goals for the year was to go to the library less and read my shelves more. And while I have still been buying or acquiring a fair number of books, hence the 27 book haul of ridiculousness, which is my second book haul of the year, I have been reading my shelves more. And I do think that makes me feel a lot more comfortable with the number of books I own. Over 500 is unnecessary. It's a lot. I do want to get it down. But I think a lot of my discomfort came not necessarily from that number, but from the amount of my shelves that I was reading, which was not a whole lot, versus reading mostly library books. So I think now that the ratio is more higher into reading the books that I own, I feel a lot less uncomfortable, and I'm more okay, I own a lot of books, but it's fine as long as I'm actually reading the books I own. So I'm not as concerned as I was last year, but I still need to read the books I own. So let me know down below if you've read any of these, what you thought of them, if there are any that you're oh no, that was a terrible book, or that was wonderful. Let me know either way, because I don't necessarily know a super lot about all of these, clearly, as I was just this is a book that exists and I bought it. That's most of my hauls. It's a book that exists and I bought it, and there were 27 of them. this month. So, as always, thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment down below, and I will see y'all again soon.